Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Garcia-Lashinsky, and I am the Managing Associate at the global law firm Dentons US LLP, where I practice complex civil litigation. I am co-director of FBANC's Professional Development Committee, along with Janice Riker, Senior Litigation Associate at Farello, Brown and Martel, where she practices white-collar criminal defense and business litigation. We would like to welcome you to the second installment of FBANC's Legacy Panel Series featuring voices from our 40-year history. Without further delay, I would like to welcome our panelists, FBANC presidents from the 1990s. First, we have Rubble Piccardo. Raul was FBANC's president in 1991 to 1992. After he was admitted in 1972, Raul worked as a staff attorney at the Central City office in the San Francisco Neighborhood Legal Assistance Foundation. Their office was in Soma, where newly arrived Filipino immigrants resided. Raul was licensed to practice in the Philippines and spoke 3 dialects, so he became their attorney. He shared that he has 3 claims to legal prominence. One, Raul played tennis with Justice Mosk, who was an associate attorney of the California Supreme Court. 2, Raul was a small claims court judge for 5 years. And 3, Raul brought a case all the way to the Supreme Court, and he believes that Santises versus Gooden is still good authority on attorneys' fees in pre-trial dismissals. We'll have to get a law student to shepherdize that case for us. And Raul shared that he started and will end his career practicing poverty law. Next, we have Dennis Messina. Dennis was FBANC president in 1992 to 1993. Since 1991, Dennis runs his own practice in San Francisco, specializing in probate, wills and trusts, conservatorship, and business and corporate transactions. Dennis has prior experience in complex litigation involving commercial, business, and civil disputes, bankruptcy, business transactions, and appellate matters. Dennis is also a practicing attorney in the Philippines, and he was previously an associate at Seguin Reina Montecillo on Ong Siaco, which was originally Perkins, DeWitt & Ponce, one of the 3 leading Philippine law firms. And I apologize for if I mispronounce those names. Eddie Angelus is what we have next. Eddie was FBANC president in 1993 to 1994. He was also involved in the UC Hastings FBANC student group, along with his classmate, Honorable Judge Bernie LaForteza. He was also president of the Filipino-American Bar Association, PABA, in Los Angeles. With support from FBANC, Eddie has been recognized as NAPABA's Best Lawyer Under 40 and Trailblazer Award. He has spent 30 years in the public sector as a government attorney and recently became the managing director and senior counsel of the LA office of Clark Hill's Government and Regulatory Affairs Practice Group. Next, we have Marina Sarmiento Fijan. She was FBANC president in 1994 to 1995. Marina is an attorney with the State of California Department of General Services, which is the state's business manager. Marina handles personnel matters for various state agencies and has oversight over state contracts. Marina has been in-house counsel for most of her career and worked at the Gap, Splunk, Sitecore USA, and FICO. In addition to her service with FBANC, Marina served 2 terms on the ABA board. Marina is a certified coach, and when she's not running Bay Area trails, you can find Marina riding motorcycles. Edwin Antolin is next. Edwin was FBANC president in 1998 to 1999. His practice focuses on California state and local tax issues and represents taxpayers of all matters, including corporate income taxes, personal income taxes, and my screen changed. Personal income taxes, sales and use taxes, utility taxes, local business, license taxes, property taxes. Edwin frequently speaks to national and local organizations and has been lectured at the UC Berkeley School of Law and Golden Gate University School of Law. And finally, we have Mike Nesbarros Jr. Mike was FBANC president in 1999 to 2000. Mike has had quite a diverse career since he was admitted to the California bar in 1979, which included time as a deputy district attorney, captain of the US JAG, private practice. He served as the mayor's chief policy analyst. He was chief trial counsel for the State Bar of California, chief public defender in Guam, just to name a few. However, Mike shared the single most significant experience he had was being a Marine in Vietnam. Mike, thank you for your service. Mike has been married to Eleanor Nesbarros, FBANC's first president for the last 47 years, and both their children, Michael and Marlo, are admitted to the California Bar, along with 6 family members. I can only imagine how that entertaining that Nesbarros dinner table is during Thanksgiving. So welcome panelists, and thank you so much for being here. And let's get started. We have a quick and full agenda. So FBANC, this is the second decade of FBANC, and FBANC is in the 1990s. FBANC is over 10 years old. How did you see the organization evolve during this time period? How about we start with Raul? And Raul, if you can unmute. Raul, if you can unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, fine. What did you want to know again? What did you want me to talk about?
Oh, sure. The question was, FBANC we're in the 90s now, and FBANC is now 10 years old. How did you see the organization evolve during this time period?
Well, it evolved, and we are proud it's still existing, And at the time when, are you asking about the conditions when we formed it or while I was president?
Both.
Okay, when you say I was the default president. All the other members had already served as president, and I was the last one. I couldn't refuse, otherwise we would have fallen into obscurity. So I was the link. And as the link, I felt I did not really have to do anything, only a link. Ask Dennis. No, I think we did continue on with the legal clinic, and we were able to attract quite a bunch of people from Daly City, from surrounding areas, and so forth and so on. That was what we did.
Okay. Anyone else want to share?
Excuse me?
Anyone else on the panel want to share their thoughts of how the organization evolved during this time period?
Yeah, I'd like to give some input here. At that time, I was, I transferred to the city, started my own practice in 93, actually, 92, 93. And at that time, there were just a handful of Filipino-American attorneys. I think I'd say actively, there were less than 100. And throughout the state, there was about 200 to 300. The thing is, they didn't have any email, so I'd have to call every one of the attorneys to encourage them to get involved. We had an outreach, but I think at that time, the FBANC focused on legal clinics. The landscape of the Filipino-American community was far different as it is now. I think the old timers like me, there were a lot of organizations. I think I headed Phil-Am Council at that time. There were about 60 organizations. So in a sense, it was more diverse, the community. And at the same time, there were fewer Filipino-American attorneys. So you had a lot of Filipino-American attorneys starting as solo practitioners. A lot of us couldn't get into big firms or at that time. So subsequent to that, I think it evolved for the better. Also, we were trying to get more attorneys. There weren't enough. I don't think there were many young attorneys at that time, but I think the path then was mostly solo practice. If you got into a law firm, you'd be fortunate, or if you got into the government, that was also equally good. But anyway, I think that was a far different environment then compared to now.
And the big difference compared to now was when I moved back from, I went to law school at UCLA, and when I moved back to the Bay Area and I was trying to find bar associations to join, I stumbled upon FBANC. And when I went to the first meeting at Rubble Piccardo's office, I walked in and they were all men. There was not a single woman at that meeting. It was just me. And then I asked Raul, where are the other women? And they all claimed that there were women attorneys. And I just looked around and said, well, I really don't see any. And so there were very, very few women attorneys. The only ones that I met were Eleanor and her sister. And I was so excited to finally meet them when I met them at an FBANC picnic. And there was actual proof that there were women attorneys. And not only that, but ALJs, which made me very excited. So as FBANC president, my goal was to really get more women to become involved in the Filipino Bar Association. So I actively recruited women attorneys. And after me, I was only the second woman president of FBANC. And after me, there became more women presidents for FBANC. But with what Dennis was talking about back then, there wasn't email. We had to call attorneys in order to come to meetings and come to events, or we mailed them things in the US mail. So it was definitely old school. And I think during my presidency, one of the things that I was proudest of was really redoing the FBANC directory so that we actually had a roster of Filipino attorneys throughout Northern California. I definitely made a recruiting pitch to try to get attorneys to pay their dues, and I shamed them into doing it by calling them in person and harassing them. And then also my presidency was the 15th anniversary of FBANC. So that was back in the day when we used to do dinner dances and people would get dressed up in gowns. You guys remember that?
Yeah, yeah.
And my parents were hardcore recruiters for FBANC and got lots of their friends who were non-lawyers to come so that there was a big dance party during my presidency. So that was fun. And I think that's what I loved so much about FBANC was it didn't feel like a bar association to me. It really felt like family. And I was really thankful for the prior presidents and Eleanor and her sister for really embracing me and just welcoming me into the Filipino community and into the FBANC family.
Can I add something to I think the 90s was also, as I look at the Zoom of these folks, great friends that I really consider. But I think in terms of the transition that we made during that period of time, not only were there lack of numbers in terms of Filipino-Americans and women lawyers, but also just representation in politics. And this group right here at the beginning of the early 90s was really the core group that began political activism that elected offices for in Daly City, for instance, with Mike Kingona and the Rob Bontas of the world would not have gotten to the position that they have, but wasn't for the core group of this group of the 90s. And Mike Nesbarros being one of the big supporters of anybody that wanted to run for office, he was the first one to write a check. If you were Filipino-American, this group was always the core foundation for political activism, whether it was Rodel Rodiz and all the folks that ran for office in the Bay Area. You can count on the FBANC leadership to be behind you in terms of, fundraisers or just a core group of real reliable leaders, which is really, as the election is tomorrow, when I look at the number of people running for Congress, running for elected office who are Filipino-Americans, I am so proud to be a part of the impetus of that in the early 90s and the 90s, and really the culmination of lawyering and community activism. I always associate with this core group of people that made a lot of the political activism even possible for people. So and then lastly, to dovetail on what Marina said, I think my dinner was the last dinner that only had like under 50 people at it when I was inaugurated. And the next thing you know, Marina was next and hers were like 300 people. It was just like, dude, really? You're talking about outdoing somebody. She did it at the Treasury on Treasure Island, and it had every community basically group attend. So the way the evolution of the funds of FBANC went from here to like here when Marina took over. So kudos to Marina for really taking the organization to the next level with respect to the things that she's done.
Thank you, Eddie. But I think the other great thing about FBANC is it really was a what do they call that in Silicon Valley? An incubator of leaders. And this is the organization that I credit with giving me or grooming me as a leader. And I went on to serve the AVA board twice, and Eddie has become a great leader himself. I mean, some of the positions that he's had in the public sector have been amazing. And, you know, anytime somebody was running for office, I really felt like FBANC was completely behind that person. So it's been a wonderful organization for that.
I'll just add a little bit more flavor about the 90s. So I started law school at Hastings in 91. And we had this section at Hastings where they must have stuck all the Filipinos, because we had 4 Filipinos in our section. And so we were tight from the very beginning. And Eddie, I just remember Eddie reaching out to us and saying, let's get together. Eddie had already graduated and was practicing. And he invited us to dinners at Cesar Alegria's house. And, you know, from year one in law school, we were connected right into FBANC. And then that led somehow quickly to me being elected president as a very young attorney. And I think that speaks to Marina's point about, you know, being groomed to be leaders from a very, very early point in our careers. I mean, I was newly graduated, probably just maybe 3 years out of law school, struggling with, you know, working at Morrison and Foerster, tons of hours, and having, you know, little kids, and then also suddenly being also serving as the president of FBANC, and it was all just a kind of a whirlwind, as I recall. But I do remember the dinner dances being quite large, thanks in large part to Marina's family, and a lot of fun, and really being able to expand FBANC. And one of the areas that I had really focused on at that time was really reaching out, as Eddie had done for us, to reach out to the younger attorneys and law students coming up to make sure we make that connection initially, and then maintain that as the attorneys progress.
Kind of moving on, what was the landscape for Filipino and Filipino-American attorneys in the Bay Area? I know Marina touched on the fact that when she started, there weren't any women. So she was, her goal was just to find other female attorneys and recruit. You know, what was the landscape for Filipino-American attorneys at the time?
My recollection was we were starting to break through into the big firms, mid-sized firms, and there was good numbers coming from the law schools in the Bay Area. So I thought that was a time when things, you know, thanks to the foundation and all of that from the earlier FBANC members, we were benefiting from that.
Well, I think the challenge was always to increase the numbers. You know, very early on, I think as Ed had articulated, was, you know, we recognized that culturally we were always steered towards the medical professions and nursing or engineering or accounting. So you would find a lot of professionals in that arena, but lawyering was one of those things that was like, you know, we needed to increase our army of basically advocates. And, you know, the whole evening with Filipino attorneys of getting introduction to people like, you know, Bill Tamayo and Ernie Lorente and folks like that, to just introduce people who had been working as lawyers, who were in government, who were in private sector, different arenas, was really important to the young pipeline generationally of encouraging them to enter the profession as an actual, you know, profession. And the thing that I think FBANC is even more important is that you develop lifelong friendships and respect for each other, and you really were cheerleaders for the accomplishments of the people like Ray Ocampo and folks, and just was sitting on sidelines hoping that they would just do fantastic things with their careers and their lives, because they were truly the trailblazers of doing great things that made it possible for the kind of numbers that you guys are enjoying in FBANC today. I listen to sometimes from afar about the debates that are occurring on the board and the kinds of, sort of things that are occurring that you as board members are dealing with. And I chuckle because of the fact that we hardly had any of those debates because we hardly had board members to actually be a part of the organization. But it is so exciting to have debates for you today. So appreciate the fact that you are there in numbers, so that at the end of the debate, you're actually much bigger than we had always envisioned as a group and as an organization in the 90s.
And yeah, we'll keep that in mind when our meetings are at 3 hours and we're still debating on issues. But I will remember that. I will remember that and share that with the rest of the board when I'll say, Eddie said it's good we're debating and we're here for 3 hours. Mike, were you going to say something?
I just wanted to join with what Eddie was saying, and that I think we concentrated on a lot of building unity with ourselves and bonding. There's a lot of testosterone flying around, like Marina said, if they have an all male group. So it was overcoming that and like, okay, no, we're going to be family instead of being, adversarial. And keep in mind, the 90s was a very hectic time. I mean, this is Amadou Diallo getting killed in New York, Rodney King, the verdict coming in, and then the riots, Columbine, Waco, Texas, the Clinton scandal and the impeachment, the first World Trade Centers getting bombed. It's the rise of Osama bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, and then crazy Bush Cheney and their warmongering. The war on drugs was real big, and cocaine was everywhere. There was a lot of shit going on. It was distracting, so it allowed us to focus on each other. So I think it was to our benefit that the world was in kind of a state of chaos.
And, I think I touched kind of a random question. Where were the meetings? I know that you had the issues of not having the email, you had to send letter. I just think that's such for some of our younger members who can't even understand the concept of not even having email or even fax, that how it's so foreign. Where were the meetings at even?
We didn't even have iPhones. There were no phones like that. And if you had a phone like that, you were very wealthy or very well connected. So most of the meetings were at the offices of the president or one of the board members. And then I think what I really, really liked about FBANC was the Christmas parties, the holiday parties were always at the home of one of the members. And so Raul was one where he hosted a couple and his parties were fantastic because his house was so fabulous. And the Nesbarros hosted, and I can't remember who else. Ray Ocampa hosted, Ernie Lorente, he had a dance floor. I mean, it was great because everybody would just come to the house and it would just be very personal, bring the kids and everyone knew each other, and just that whole feel of extended family was really, really core to the 90s group.
There were the meetings were held at the law offices of Dennis Messina and Manny Tumaning. So
I want to echo what Eddie said Mike said with a lot of testosterone. And I just wanted to put this on record. We had, during my presidency, we had one vice president, and Eddie and Mike can go on being larger than life. They were really, full of opinions. So we decided to make a change and have an internal vice president and an external vice president because of Eddie and Mike. And that carried through until, I guess, more recently when you changed it, you have a president-elect. We had a president-elect then, I think. I'm not certain. But, it's definitely a family. Everybody got to know each other. There, people were pretty close. And maybe, I guess that's one advantage of not having too many attorneys, because having a lot of, attorneys are pretty usually strong personalities, but we did get to know everybody really well. And we'd get together, not only for Christmas, but sometimes we'd get together, have lunch. We'd have, Raul hosted a Christmas lunch, and that was, a lot of fun. But now with the organization so large, I really can't see how you would encourage everybody, because you shoot out an email and then sometimes, well, I don't know this person or whatever. I don't know the members. That's my perspective. So sometimes I'd go there, who's going to go among the old group? And, it's just it's not very many. So maybe that's something that this is really a good exercise, because you're getting the oldies together.
I
Yeah,
don't consider myself an oldie.
go ahead. My observation now is there's hardly any Filipino lawyer who specializes in, say, poverty law. Nobody services the Filipino community anymore. Single practitioners who would be able to advise, Filipino clients who always speak Tagalog, because it's really important for a lawyer, Filipino lawyer, who banks on the Filipino community to speak Tagalog and be, acquainted with Filipino culture. I started practice while I was in legal assistance in the Southern market, and most of my clients were, poverty clients. And I was so happy when I learned that I didn't really have anything to lose, because most of my clients were judgment proof. They were judgment proof. Even though judgments were rendered against them, I'd feel easy because we had nothing to pay. And then it was really quite hard. I came from the Philippines. I was a lawyer in the Philippines. And I went to UC Berkeley for my master's degree. And I wanted to take the bar exams because I wanted to practice here before I went back to the Philippines. But I wouldn't be allowed to take it because I did not have an American law degree. I went back to UC, finished law all over again, and then took the bar exams, only to be informed that I could not be admitted because I wasn't a citizen. So we filed a case against the state bar challenging the constitutionality of that rule. We won, and I was able to get in. 6 months delayed. And then because I was the only Filipino lawyer in the Bay Area who spoke Tagalog, I was accepted to work at legal assistance. Legal assistance, I became the lawyer of South of Market's Filipino residents. Everybody came to see me. I handled virtually everything. I couldn't really specialize because cases of Filipino clients were really varied, really, really different. I could not specialize in anything. So after about 5 years, the board of the foundation wanted us out. They wanted to clean the foundation of deadwoods. So I started my practice. I did not have any hard time looking for clients. The people who saw me in legal assistance followed me. And I told them, I'm no longer free. And they said, that's fine because we are now working. So I never had any problem looking for clients because of that. And it was at the time when the poverty law programs of Johnson was really very popular. For instance, for one vacancy in the foundation, there'd be about 200, 250 applicants from Harvard, from Yale, from so forth and so on, because everybody wanted to practice in the Bay Area. So that's, from then on, I started my legal practice. So that's my background. And Mike, while Mike was the drug czar in Oakland, got me appointed as a commissioner, police commissioner. And I did not really did I do anything, Mike? No.
You were excellent, Raul.
I think there was a question from the chat that asked for some sort of a story that these board members would basically, not be known. Does anybody have such a story? Okay, I will share one since to dovetail to Raul. A lot of people don't appreciate the fact that Raul was actually a police commissioner in Oakland at one point. And being that marijuana is now legal, basically Raul was always overthinking, even in the 90s, where at the end of the day, you would go to Raul's party in Oakland Hills and and then he would tell me, he goes, yeah, dude, I had to quit the police commission. And I go, why? I said, well, dude, that's such a powerful position. Why would you quit being a police commission? Because, because of the pot.
I could get caught.
So Raul was always forward thinking. You guys should know that.
Yes.
He was the first advocate for legalized marijuana.
Yes, too, I associate.
Does anyone else have a story from the 19s that you know, but none of us else would know? Because that's a great story, Eddie, and I really appreciate that story. That can be one of our claims as an advocate for the community.
Hey, Marina, what have you been doing? Can you hear me?
Hi, Raul. I started working for the Department of General Services for the state of California
Since when?
since 2 weeks ago.
Only 2 weeks ago. Great, that's good. And you, Mike, how are things going with you? Okay.
Good.
And Eleanor,
Mike's retired, right? You're retired?
Yes,
how
ma'am.
many? Mike is retired. I'm not. I still have a few cases. I'm almost there. I'm almost there. My goal in practice was not to work unless I wanted to. That was my goal. Also, that I would not have any responsibility to anybody, meaning totally free of any responsibility. I'm almost there. For 2 more cases, then I'll be free from anything. Wouldn't it be nice? It's a luxury.
So Eddie, I want to know what you're doing, having left public service.
I'm having basically, so I will share with the group. After 30 years, I decided to basically, quote unquote, retire from public service, thinking that I would go in and try this private practice bit, and try to. So I was recruited to basically go and take over a lobbying practice for this large law firm, Clark Hill, to lobby in Washington and Sacramento. And I started on March 5th, 2020. So you guys can predict how that is going.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that I had the greatest challenge and have a pandemic in the middle of my private practice endeavor.
Oh my goodness.
So that for client development purposes, I have no business development money. I can't leave my house, nor can I call anybody to give me work. So it's been quite the challenge. I will briefly tell you this one story. My first day was March 5th, and since my practice is in Washington, I get on a plane and go to Washington for a legislative update. And next thing you know, I'm having a meeting with Senator Cruz, and I take a picture with Senator Cruz. I put it on LinkedIn. All of a sudden, I'm like, hey, look, I'm for hire for private practice for lobbying in Washington, D.C. I get back to Los Angeles. And next thing you know, Senator Cruz is on CNN saying he's quarantining himself for 14 days because he was exposed with somebody with COVID-19. And so then I go, oh, that's not good. So then I had to call HR and say, excuse me, but I was in Washington, and I can't deny the fact that I was meeting with the guy because I have a picture with him on my LinkedIn account. So then I had to call HR, and then they're like, yeah, dude, you're quarantining for 14 days. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was in March. It is now November. I haven't seen my office since. There's my entree to the private sector. I knew there was a reason why I didn't want to do this.
Right. That's 2020 right there.
That's what I've been up to, Marina. Just hustling from my Zoom. You know, that's why I don't need the actual tech orientation, because I do this pretty frequently.
Well, it'd be remiss to say, you know, we are in the eve of the election, and hopefully everyone that's here and that's attending has either already voted or has their plan to place their vote tomorrow. But for the panelists, what issues do you see the Filipino-American community, what issues do you see facing the Filipino-American community under the current Trump administration or the potential Biden administration?
I think one thing that's really important is going to be the participation in the immigration reform discussion. I think that, you know, you're going to have to come up with suggestions about DACA and come up with suggestions on a path to citizenship for undocumented workers, undocumented people. That's where FBANC, you do have quite a few immigration attorneys. I would rely on their expertise, perhaps hold a forum of some kind, get together a planning strategy so that you have a recommendation when the White House starts calling for recommendations. And lobby to get an appointment to one of those commissions that I'm sure that will be created. It's important for our community and it's important for our visibility.
Anyone else on?
Pregnant pause.
Well, we can move on. And please, anyone, as the attendees, feel free to ask questions on the chat and we can answer them to our panel. So feel free to do that. You know, over the years, FBANC has seen moments of real challenge in the Bay Area, in our country and back in the Philippines. What is your perspective of the role of FBANC during these times?
In the Philippines or here?
And everything, yeah.
You know, they are now in Congress in the Philippines. They are now discussing the proposed bill to allow divorce in the Philippines, because right now they allow annulment but not divorce. It's really quite strange. I would hope that anybody in FBANC who practices family law would volunteer to be a resource person during this legislative hearings in the Philippines, because they really have a wrong idea of what the divorce results in. You know, we can volunteer. We can say we practiced domestic relations law in California, and the results are not as bad as the vision it to be. Encourage them, because you know it's really bad in the Philippines. Can you imagine? About 50% of the married people are separated and have separate families. I have witnessed in the Philippines proceedings for annulment, where the ground is fiscal inability or so forth and so on, where the grandchildren are testifying against the grandmother, for instance, saying that the grandmother is unfit. Just foolish, just really, really bad. Now we can at least tell them that somehow the divorce laws in California result in maybe good endings rather than the endings that the divorce laws in California end up in. That would be really a good service for us through the Philippines. Can you imagine only 50% of married couples still remain married? Most are separated, most have their own families outside, but they cannot have real families. The worst thing now is there was a case which came out maybe 2 or 3 days ago, where this guy was married and he had another family, with children and so forth and so on. The first wife sued the guy for violence, intellectual violence kind of. And the guy was sentenced to 8 years in jail, mind you, 8 years in jail for having a family outside. Now, if we had divorce, he could have divorced the first wife and make another family with another woman. Everything would have been perfect for him. But not now. He will have to serve 8 years in jail. This is the kind of thing that we have to educate the Philippines about the results of divorce. We can volunteer. resource persons. Dennis can. Dennis?
Yeah, I think it should be brought up with the National Filipino-American Attorney Organization, because that's, a more powerful voice maybe perhaps. And then, there are only two countries in the world that doesn't allow divorce. The Philippines. There were three before. Malta was one, but now they've legalized it. And I think in Rome, it's not really a country, but nevertheless, that's one of the issues that maybe perhaps the FBANC could take on. Aside from that, I agree with what Mike said, the DACA immigration issues, but that's assuming that, fingers crossed, that Biden wins, because you know what will happen if Trump wins. But I think we have pretty much a strong lobby. Eddie's there, and all the other attorneys as well, to lobby for immigration reform, for DACA. There's so many problems, and right now, as far as I know, the immigration processing has just slowed down, really slowed down, from the other attorneys I've spoken to.
Can I just shine in, at least on the previous question with respect to the election tomorrow? I think as Filipino Americans, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, the reality is that you have to participate in the political process. The reality is we need more people in government at the highest level of government. In the federal government, certainly Rob is represented as well at the state level, being as first, Filipino-American state legislators. We need more legislators at the federal level, but more importantly, as lawyers, you could appreciate the fact that we need you to change the composition of the court system. And that happens politically, honestly. The blunt reality is people don't link the fact that the political process is what picks judges in this country. And so as young lawyers, as young practitioners in the private sector and whatever it is you're doing, think about yourself in terms of the opportunity to serve in the public service, but also to run for office. Whether it's Daly City or what have you. I ran for office in Daly City, and that seat has remained Filipina since I held it in Jefferson Union High School District. The things that I've done in terms of Daly City with Rose Zimmerman as city attorney, and as well as, obviously Ray Bonaventura and all the folks that have served on the city council all across the Bay Area. As young Filipina lawyers, Filipinx, you should really be thinking about running for office. And whatever happens tomorrow, be excited about the opportunity to really change, make the change that you want to see happen, and regardless of party. Regardless of what side, be involved, get involved. In my business, I don't see a whole lot of Filipina lobbyists running around Sacramento, running around Washington. We do have a member, Irene Bueno, who has been a force, honestly, in Washington, D.C. as a Filipino-owned lobbyist, and she is a lot of our conduit to the politically on what happens in the country. And Irene never forgets her roots, that she went to Hastings and that she was an FBANC member, and she really credits her start in politics as well, like always, in this organization.
I want to move to a question from the audience. Tomorrow or soon after, we will find out whether Proposition 16 will reinstate affirmative action in public contracting and education at the state level. What can FBANC attorneys do to promote equity in education access and public contracting for all BIPOC communities if Proposition 16 passes, or if Proposition 16 does not pass?
I would just comment on what Eddie just said. When you're talking about government contracts, you're talking about political power. Mm-hmm. And so it is about getting people elected. I mean, if you really want to talk about, the street fighting of getting money and power, it is through elected office. The lawyers, we can do certain kinds of advocacy, but at some point it's just a polemic. But if you want to have the real guts of it, you got to be in the office or next to the office or be close to it. You got to work on campaigns, or you got to be the candidate. You got to make yourself visible and necessary.
I hate to shine in again on this, but it seems like a lot of your questions actually delve into the world that I live in. I will tell you, Dennis Messina and I's frustration in many respects is city and county of San Francisco, we still don't have a member of the Board of Supervisors, and we have worked on that years and years and years. And if there's a young person out there listening to this who wants to run for, Board of Supervisors and have a Filipino-American serve on that great city, you should really consider it, because it has been a very tough nut to crack. With that, I will tell you in terms of 16, look, I am a beneficiary of the affirmative action programs. I have no doubt in my mind that I am an affirmative action baby. I immigrated in 72. And so, I'm an immigrant from the Philippines. And so at the end of the day, I was at the heart of the civil rights movement. I am the beneficiary of that fight that Martin Luther King was fighting, the passage of the Civil Rights Act and passage of all of those initiatives that were created to allow me to go to college at UCSB and allow me to go to be a part of LEOP at Hastings College of the Law. So do I see the value with respect to the affirmative action programs? Absolutely. I'm a reflection of that, right? Now, if 16 doesn't pass or does pass, the real heart of it, folks, in terms of what it is that you need to do is you need to win hearts and minds. Make community appreciate that we're all in this together. And it is really about hitting, the value of diversity, the value that, having a diverse group is really beneficial. I know it's shocking because everybody lives in urban areas, but do you know that really the reality is the majority, and I want to say 76% of America is still categorized by the census white. So does Donald Trump have a chance to win tomorrow? Absolutely. Because if you look at pure numbers with respect to it, it is still, the majority of America is still white. And so you can't do it alone. You have to win hearts and minds of others and have allies in this fight to appreciate diversity.
You. And I want to also just touch on another question. What advice do you have for current members? And I also want to pose a question specifically to Edwin for law students who are there, since you sort of came up from the beginning as a law student. What advice do you have for law students in terms of how FBANC can be part of their lives and what they've done, what FBANC has done for them?
All right, that's a great question. Well, what I would suggest is what would benefited me is getting connected as soon as possible. And I think, there's really no excuse not to if you're a law student, because FBANC is so visible and so easy to connect with as an organization. But in addition to that, I think kind of finding those lawyers who are going to be your mentors. And one of the great things about FBANC is it like Marina and Eddie and so many of others have said, it is like a family. And there are so many people who want to help law students. And all you have to do is ask, and you will have probably more responses than you can handle. And then finding the ones who are doing things that interest you. You may not want to be a tax lawyer, but maybe you just want to understand what tax lawyers do. And so call me up or call Eddie up or call Raul up and, figure that out, because, you have all of these lawyers who are practicing, doing all kinds of different things. I can guarantee you, I did not plan to be a tax lawyer when I went to law school. I thought I was going to be doing something completely different, but, you just take a class and it's kind of interesting. And then for me, at least, and then you go down that path. And so you never know how you're going to end up. I think once your plans when you get into law school versus, what you end up doing at the end, or even 10 years or 15 years, 20 years later. So
I'm going to add on to that, because I actually worked at 2 different law schools in the Bay Area as a legal services, legal career counselor. So I've probably counseled over 1,000 2,000 attorneys and law students about their legal careers. And I always talk about how volunteering for FBANC really, really helped me as an attorney, because it basically has helped me get almost every single job that I've gotten has been through an FBANC or an ABA connection. And so having mentors and having an extended network of attorneys that I've gotten to know well has really helped promote my career, and I've seen it help promote other people's careers. And for law students who are a little bit shy, and when I was a young attorney, I don't think I would have picked up the phone and started calling one of these guys unless I actually had volunteered in some way. And so I encourage law students to start volunteering and doing things for FBANC, because that gives you kind of the pathway to be able to start talking to some of these attorneys. So help plan a panel or volunteer at the FBANC dinner. And for me, when I volunteered, that gave me an excuse to actually go up and start talking to people. I felt like, okay, I'm an usher, I have an excuse to actually approach this partner at a big firm who I'm really scared to talk to, but because I have a role at the event, then I felt like that just gave me a little bit more confidence about approaching other attorneys. And so for me, that worked, and I overcame my shyness, and now you can't stop me. So there you go.
That's true.
Never been able to stop you, Marina.
Well, that's because I had to kick all your butts, all of you men. I mean, it was like, seriously, good.
Yeah.
I had 3 brothers, or else I would have not made it in that room full of men.
Marina, your experience points to a, okay.
Please, before we run out of time, and it's going to bounce off of what Marina and several of the others have said. I hope that FBANC reinstates the dinner dance for our installation. Not only that we reinstate the dinner dance, but that we begin to focus, like Marina did in a grand fashion, on inviting community organizations. Right now, the last few dinner installations I went to, it's all big firm stuff. And we've lost our touch, we've lost our roots with our community. Unless we have a bunch of Filipinos from a bunch of Filipino organizations getting out dancing each other, and us FBANC members having a chance to get to know each other and not sucking up to the white bosses that come to our dinners. So I strongly encourage you guys to reinstate the dinner dance. And I'm still advocating on something that Marina did, is creating a directory of our lawyers and what their specialty is and what their jurisdiction. I mean, Eleanor and I get calls from people who want referrals, and I don't know who to refer them to, and I don't have an FBANC directory. And I think Richard Tamor is tired of me calling him up and say, who does this?
You know what? You know what I'd hope FBANC would do? It should encourage the members of the IBP, Integrated Bar of the Philippines of California, to join. IBP is an organization of Filipino lawyers licensed to practice in the Philippines who pass the California bar exams. So they can practice in 2 jurisdictions, but they are by themselves, I talk to them, and very few want to join FBANC, which for reasons I don't know. Maybe if we extend an invitation to them, they might start, because they can practice in the Philippines and they can practice here. But yet they don't want to join, I don't know. Maybe a little encouragement we would benefit from their membership. And they have successful practices.
I think the only thing that I would add to what people have already indicated is the fact that, if you take away anything today, is the whole idea of mentorship is really, really key in terms of FBANC. We have so many people, we don't have them in terms of numbers, but they are there in terms of critical positions. Having Manong Bill Tamayo at the level that he plays in terms of the federal government, is amazing. And so as students, you should be reaching out to people like that. And Judge Reyes is as you know, And Ben was a young paralegal when I met him at Bernasium many years ago. And so to get on the bench, you should be spending time with him. There are people in critical places, whether it's in tech or whether it's in government. And please, if I can employ your law students as well as the other folks, there are a lot of folks, mentors that can serve you, that could help you really create your own career and your own path to success. And we're all going to be, because we're FBANC, because we're culturally our family and professionally connected, we will help.
Any other last words before I pass on to Mari?
So I'm going to have to bounce because I have to try to get a client. So.
Eddie, before we lose you, let's just do a quick picture. So if you can smile and cheese. Okay, go. You can go now, Eddie. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie.
See you, Eddie.
And Mari, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Mari Bando Macalado. I am the FBANC president this year. And we are so honored to have our FBANC presidents from the 90s here today with us. It is just so heartwarming to hear about the early beginnings of FBANC. And I'm just so grateful for this group's efforts in creating the family that we have today. Thank you, Marina, for actively recruiting women attorneys to be part of FBANC and really blazing the trails for Pinay powerhouse attorneys like myself. Edwin echoed Marina's sentiments and shared one of the great things about FBANC, not just being mentorship, but really incubating leaders and grooming leaders to be part of the community. And I also want to thank Raul for reminding us that FBANC's legal clinics was really a core service bank that we continue to do today, although in a different kind of format with us being virtual this year. Also, thanks again to Eddie for sharing how FBANC supported Phil-Am representation in politics. Many of us are anxious about the elections tomorrow, but I am really encouraged by the record-breaking early turnout, which to me indicates a collective desire for deep social change. So again, Mike, Dennis, Eddie, thank you for encouraging our members to get appointed, to serve the community, and to run for office to make the change that we want to see. Thank you to all of you for your service to FBANC back in the 90s and today as advisory board members. And as soon as we are all able to meet in person again, I really would love to have a dinner dance. And I expect all of you to be on that dance floor to celebrate FBANC's 40th anniversary. And the membership directory is in the works. So hopefully we get it launched this year. And I do appreciate the tip on connecting with IBP. We have tried connecting with them in the past, but I think we just need to do a better job doing that. So again, as a reminder to everyone, we are celebrating FBANC being recognized by NAPABA as Affiliate of the Year. This is the first time that NAPABA in its 32-year history to recognize a Filipina, Filipinx organization. So we are really proud of that. That will be happening this Thursday at 5 o'clock. Right before the Infala installation gala. So thank you to all of our panelists. And if anyone has last words as well, please feel free to do that now.
Thank you so much for having us. It was really great to reconnect with the 90s gang and just hear where everybody's going. And, we all love FBANC. And I think we're all very, very happy to be able to share with you the history and the legacy and to see it live on. It's really an honor. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
FBANC's in great hands. I'm so happy to see the new leaders, and thank you for organizing this.
Well said.
Ciao.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone, for
everyone.
making it. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Hopefully see
Thank
you
you.
this week. Take care.